Welcome to our first podcast. This is something we're trying out and we're really excited to try out, and we're looking forward to doing some more of these. We're really lucky to have a special guest today that we'll introduce in a few minutes when she comes on. Here today, I'm Daniel Braun, and with me is Samar. And we're missing two of our members of our group. Sadly, they weren't able to join us, but they're definitely going to be here for the next few, and we're excited for that. And wherever you came from, whether it's Instagram or our website, we're really happy to have you here. So, yeah, Samar, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. As Daniel said, we're missing two members here, but we're sure we have a really great guest. So our guest is named Alia Sarfraz. She is running for the Illinois 52nd House District for the Green Party. And I think that's really interesting that she's running for the Green Party. Many politicians don't run for the smaller parties because they're not really popular, or they don't really have like a place often. They're not seen as having a place in federal elections. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to ask her about her decision to run for the Green Party. And I'm interested to see, we were talking about this before we started, how they differentiate themselves from the Democratic Party, and if she sees it as an advantage or a disadvantage running in the Green Party. I also want to definitely ask her about some more current events like COVID, climate, police reform, and she's running in Chicago. And as we've seen in Chicago, where I live, there's been a lot of disruption, protests, riots, whatever people want to call them. I know that can become politically charged, but I want to see how she would address that. And she's had a very interesting upbringing. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Both of her parents come from or have a very experienced background.
Yeah, I think her mom worked for the United Nations, but I think she worked for the United Nations too. So she has both political and civic background in both Australia and the United States. She was a paralegal, I believe. And yeah.
Yeah.
I think, sorry.
Yeah. We're really excited to have her. She'll be on in a few minutes, so we'll talk to you guys then. Hi, guys. Welcome back. We're now here with our special guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit. So if there's anything you want our listeners to hear, you have the stage.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm very excited to be here tonight. I'm powering with the youth, and the youth is our future. So the fact that we have enthusiasm amongst you is one of the keys and fundamentals to establishing democracy in the United States of America. So for the people at VoterBuddies and all of you online tonight, I really appreciate and am really humbled by you all, because I feel that you all will be the lead one day, and I'm just part of this puzzle that makes America.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're very happy to have you on. We just wanted to start off with asking you how you got into politics, and yeah, what it got you interested in it.
Okay, well, basically I'm running for State House of Rep in Illinois. And what got me excited was the fact that I was kind of feeling frustrated about the situation in politics. And I remember one of my key friends at Rainbow Push said to me once many years ago that if you're complaining about a system, you either step up and you either do something about it, or you're part of the problem. So I think that pushed me into a mode of problem solving. And I felt like I'd sat there and I had all these ideas on reform for America, but I'd never really stepped up to the plate. I'd always been feeding people about what needs to be done, but never part of the action process at the front lines. And I think that was a big, important push towards what is becoming here within the state. And I think just by me stepping up has influenced the way the platform's being viewed as well. And I think there were certain issues that neither the Republican or the Democrat would have been talking about had I not stepped up. I think having that third party candidate really made them step up their game and talk about issues that they probably wouldn't have addressed.
Thank you. You brought up the third party candidate. So you're running as the Green Party.
That's
And I found that really interesting because a lot of people, whenever they think of the political process, they think of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. What inspired you so much to run as part of the Green Party?
You know what? I think a lot of people are frustrated. There was a lot of back and forth going between the Republicans and the Democrats, and a lot of people became divided. There's a lot of tension, and there are a lot of people who fit that in between. Well, I'm not necessarily a Republican or a Democrat, but I care more about the issues and the people and not the corporations. So that's why I stepped up as a Green. I think it's time. America needs a fresh face and a new outlook, especially when it comes to issues like climate change. We shouldn't be fighting about this. This should be a priority, especially for your generation to come. We're building a space here for you all. It's not about us anymore.
And do you view running in the Green Party as an advantage or a disadvantage? Because we've seen in some presidential elections, maybe a little bit less of the media centered towards the Green Party, but at a state level, do you see it as an advantage or a disadvantage?
You know, there are advantages and disadvantages, but overall, I see the positives. It is harder for me when it comes to gathering donations, funding, logistics, but I'm really blessed in terms of I am that one-woman powerhouse. And I feel like people have reached out to me from across the nation to help me in certain ways. And campaigning with COVID means more social media and other technology-based work that not the other candidates just aren't as savvy in that, I'm going to admit. And so that for me works in my favor. I feel like creating that room for a third party is also it's a lot of vulnerability to step up to that and to risk certain things. And I mean, it's always very, very vulnerable when you want to become a candidate because you're exposing yourself to the world in ways where you will be attacked, where people will come at you, people will disagree with you. But the thing behind it all is you just have to learn not to take it personally. It says more about them than you. And if a person doesn't agree with your point of view, it's just because they have a different viewpoint. So I step away from those people. You have to go where the people are receptive to your message, where they're willing to listen and say, you know what, I agree with this, or perhaps, did you ever think about this? And I think one of the key things is to always embrace and be willing to learn from others. I've experienced people that have taught me some insight into what they believe. I remember in canvassing, I came across a woman who had seen polio. And she said to me, you kids do not even understand that COVID isn't as significant a threat. But for us, we're living in this time, we feel like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened and it's taken over. So I think that gave me some perspective.
Yeah, that sounds like really powerful, like meeting someone with such perspective. And you were talking about how she didn't think COVID was as much a threat as polio. So kind of touching on like a kind of a current event for COVID, Governor Pritzker's decision to shut down the government was met with some opposition and some support. Where do you stand on that? Do you think that he made the right decision, him and Lori Lightfoot made the right decision, or what do you think about that?
It's interesting because when I did speak to that woman, I started to realize that a lot of small business did suffer. And where I live, it's more sort of spaced out. The population isn't as big as it is in Chicago, especially where space is limited, people are in close contact. So I feel like in a place like downtown Chicago, we had to come under lockdown. There was no other way out. When we look at the suburbs, I think we could have looked at each situation based on numbers, based on, how heavily impacted some businesses are and how much traffic went into certain places, because maybe small business didn't have as many customers. So for them to shut down didn't make sense, right? So I think when it comes to that, I believe that is one way where COVID necessarily didn't have to impact or affect those people in particular, because at the end of the day, it is an economic disaster. It affects people's pockets, and that also gives into the well-being of the American economy and people's livelihood. So that is an aspect that we have to sort of look at as well.
I think those are some really, really great points. Also with COVID, what is your position on reopening or closing down schools while the virus is still high?
That's a very hot topic. I believe that a lot of people are frustrated with the situation in COVID right now. Some people don't even feel that COVID is real. They literally believe it's a hoax. And there is science behind it. So for us to not treat it accordingly would be dismissive. Okay. But having said that, it's a huge cost for schools to bear, to stay open, to sanitize, to keep the space. But I know that the schools did go through a lockdown here, and a lot of parents did come out and they started a protest, and they believed that it was in their children's vested interest to be back at school. I know personally my daughters, they perform better when they're in class. Remote learning isn't necessarily for them. There are some children that are better off remote learning. I think for children who get bullied, it may even be a healthier environment at home. But when it comes to resilience, children are very resilient. And I think operating in a home-based situation, at least, maybe was a skill that a lot of youth did need, because the future of America, or even the world, I see is more remote-based. I think that technology will mean more jobs will be out of homes, and this is a small preparation for that. That's just me envisioning the future. So, I think when it comes to that, children are able to then be able to say, okay, I have to focus, I have to work, I have to get ready and prepare myself. I have to look at my calendar. And so when it comes to organization skills in another way, the children do pick up on areas that are learning opportunities. I know my daughters became more self-sufficient when it came to cooking and things like that, which is something they never did at school. I mean, they learned some cooking aspects, but when it comes to, picking up after slack at home, they're more willing to do that now. So, I don't view it as a negative. I view it as a positive, an area for learning and an opportunity for growth in other areas.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good point, especially applicable to us when we're in remote learning. That definitely makes a lot of sense. You, on the question before that, you touched about how COVID has taken a really big hit on the economy. If you were to be elected, what measures would you put in place, or how would you help people in small businesses get back on their feet?
Here's the thing. Our tax system is very regressive. As you saw, the President Trump, or even other people that are elite in America, get away with paying less tax than middle and working class families. Okay, it's not easy. And so I feel like that aspect needs to be looked into, and that's where the fair tax comes in. It's a graduated system of tax, and people will be voting on that issue. So it's very important that youth be up to par and informed when making that decision come the November election. We also, in Illinois, do not have enough revenue generated, okay? So we need to look into ways where we're actually generating income instead of asking people to take out of their pocket. And I believe certain ways of looking into tourism and having a public bank for student loans, for developers, when it comes to housing, because the cost of everything is going up and salaries have stagnated. We are in this cycle that we need to get out of. I do believe that small business that's local should not have local tax applied to incentivize people to purchase there instead of buying from other areas. So small things like that where we incentivize people, and for those that, give emissions into the air that are not healthy and toxic for the environment should be penalized, okay? Then a lot of the food industry that we have produces a lot of waste, a lot of cost, and we need to look into those areas as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And I think climate change is a really important issue, especially to our generation, because there's a lot of people, especially in the youth, that are really passionate about this issue. What specific pieces of, I think you touched on this a little bit, but what specific pieces of legislation would you support or would you push to really try to minimize the effect of climate change?
When it comes to climate change, I want to look into an overhaul of the way the food is produced. Okay, there's a lot of waste that goes into that. When it comes to the way the whole of my district is built up, we can't afford to keep losing trees. People keep cutting them down. So for every tree cut down, there should be at least 2 to replace that. That only makes sense. Small measures like that would make a huge difference. And then just, maybe even curbing the electricity that we utilize, which is already, it's a commitment that the people in this area do make. And we need to stick to that. And I believe there just needs to be more education on the way and an awareness of what we do and contribute to climate change, like salting roads during winters. We need to look at other measures that are more healthy for the environment. We already have a lot of well water here that's being utilized. So I don't believe that is as a big an issue that needs to be looked into. But I do believe that emissions into the environment is a major cause for the degeneration of the environment, the air we breathe and climate. So in Illinois, that is something that really needs to be addressed. I know there are certain areas in Illinois where there is higher pollution level, and public transport and the way we utilize that, downtown access needs to be made easier by train and things like that in order to avoid commute time and to reduce the amount of waste that goes into the air, emissions and so forth.
Yeah, that's definitely that definitely makes sense, and that's definitely a big issue for our generation. Moving on to another topic that's come into the news very recently, or not, I shouldn't say very recently, but it's picked up a lot recently, police reform. I was wondering your stance on that, and just what you thought of that and how you would, what legislation you would push or hold back.
Okay, a big part of my platform is checks and balances and accountability. I do believe that, we can have bad apples in any situation. And even me running as a Green candidate is a check and balance on the system. We have a lot of Democrat, Republican, but how about a check on those two? How about a check on the way we handle elections and then even the way we deal with police? So just even for me to be elected into would give a greater oversight into the way we manage and deal with police and the way we look at things. In speaking to an elder that I was canvassing with, he informed me that police were getting more military style haircuts. And he was saying that that was something that really affected him. He was like, why do we have this mentality of military creeping into the policing? And it wasn't even something I thought about, because that is where generational insight comes into play. You're dealing with a person who's seen the past, present, and can even gauge where the future is headed. And I appreciated that feedback. And I believe that it is because a lot of police that are recruited come with military backgrounds. And what they do not know is that when they're dealing with civilians, it's not a war zone. We're dealing with people that need a lesser level of dealing with when it comes to certain techniques we do in training. And then some of the weapons that they have are on a military scale, which shouldn't be the case. We're dealing with local law enforcement, okay? So those are areas where I would look into having reform, maybe implementing body cameras. That way the he said, she said gets taken out and juries can come up with a better verdict when it comes to assessing a fault. And it also makes both parties on, more aware of what's going on if they're being recorded, and more cautious of the way they're behaving. Sometimes when we get in anger or in a certain situation, we lose control, but just having a camera in a situation could mean that, a person will realize, hey, you know what, I'm being recorded. This is going to stay with me, and I think even just that becomes a way for somebody to think about how they're behaving a bit more. I mean, I know like even now when we're talking, I'm being recorded, so I'm, more cautious of my posture, okay? So I think like for people to be recorded, they would be more willing to put on their best face.
And kind of adding on to police reform, we've seen in Chicago, we've seen a lot of protests, some that have turned violent, some that have not. And there's been a lot of looting, especially a month ago around then. How would you address that if you were elected? How would you contain, or what would you do to address that?
I think we really need to address the root causes. Okay, a lot of it is people are very on edge these days. They're dealing with COVID. We're dealing with the fear of having proper access to justice. And then other situations, I think politically, it's just a hostile environment right now. There's a lot of media that needs to be not as aggressive in their approach, I believe. And that is why I think that media platforms need to be more local than media outlets that are on the national level. I think that would change a lot, even the way we view COVID as a threat, to hear more feedback from local doctors or reporting when it comes to the whole situation of why people are rioting and so forth. I believe that we need to look into the real reasons of why people are so frustrated, why they need to be out there, and why they need to protest. Is it that they're angry? If they're angry, why? We need to have like more discussion around that. And I believe that those discussions can happen in a civil and proper manner, even facilitated by maybe local representatives. Whether Americans need more counseling and access to therapy. I know that marijuana abuse is up more simply due to the level of anxiety that people are feeling. Alcohol use and cigarette use has declined. And these are just statistics. So it's showing that people right now are trying to deal with situations that are outside of their control. And when they're like that, it's leading to a lot of pent-up frustration, I believe, which needs to be challenged. We need to look into mental health. We need to have more acknowledgement of the need to have meditation and other positive ways in which we can have an outlet. And when it comes to crime, and some of these other issues, we need to know why. Do people not have the resources to go about their day-to-day functioning? Why are people so financially strapped? Can we empower them in other ways?
Thank you. That's really good. I really love your description of how kind of just looking for the root cause of the issue versus just kind of being, let's punish people to the highest extent, but let's try to empower them instead. That's really great.
No, thank you. I do believe that we do need to come tough on crime, but also the causes. We really need to be more compassionate in America coming forward. And I don't see enough of that. I think that is the only way we can get out of the situation that has become right now.
Thank you. We don't want to keep you too long. We're just going to ask you maybe one or two more questions. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm enjoying this.
Great. So you have a legal background, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So what would be your position on capital punishment? Now, capital punishment in Illinois was banned since 2011. There have been some attempts to bring it back. What's your opinion on that?
I'm not pro capital punishment. I view justice as being more compassionate. There are situations where we do need to be tough. I believe in higher crimes such as murder and so forth. We do need to really clamp down on those things, or a lot of vehicles that get stolen and gang organized crime. That kind of stuff really frustrates people, and it shouldn't be viewed as being awarded in any way. But having said that, we need to look into why these things are happening. I believe if everybody was empowered enough and being given all the resources they needed, they wouldn't look to other means for certain things. I mean, when it comes to murder and rape and other sorts of felonies such as those, I would believe that, things need to be a little bit more serious, because a person could become a threat to society. But on a lower scale, I don't believe that even at that, I don't think that capital punishment is the way out. I do believe that people are able to reform and reconsider what they did and be forgiven and come to a place of realization that what they did was not right. But it takes a lot of therapy and inner work to come to that place. And I think that's where we really need to help people.
And kind of going from one end of the spectrum to the other, capital punishment for lower crimes, what's your stance? I know in Illinois there's been a big push for less incarceration. Where do you stand on that? How would you rehabilitate people to make our prisons more, to let people come from prison to be able to readjust to life back in society?
Well, when it comes to crime in Illinois, a lot of it is via gang-based culture. I mean, that's at least what I've read. So we need to ask ourselves why this culture is still in existence, okay? And part of that is these young, vulnerable boys seeing a certain type of violence and not thinking that there's any way out of it. And I believe that for those kind of children, there needs to be a positive role model figure, a mentor, to be able to assist them or to show them hope of a way to create life outside of crime, violence, and those sorts of measures. The interesting thing is we could, empower farming and other areas where people could generate income and be busy with livelihood and serve and empower the locals. I do believe there needs to be a revival of that, simply because we import too much food. There's enough resource. We have everything here to become self-sustainable in Illinois. There is no reason why we keep looking for the external. And that's where I feel like this could play a part in all of that. I do believe that, the South Side has a lot of potential. We could make museums there. There's so much culture. There's a lot of NBA stars. There's a lot of, we could make a mini Disney theme park if we wanted to, just based on Chicago history, and raise so much revenue like we have at Disney. And why do we travel to Disney? We have so much going on here. We could recreate an Al Capone style home where, people could enter and play video clips of what exactly happened, watch a small movie about his life, and, become cultured in what was Chicago. There's a whole blues music scene that began here. So like the way they have the Motown music in Michigan, we could do something similar to that here. But that's the thing. Nobody's come forward with these ideas and a platform. People just keep regurgitating the same things simply because we have a two-party system that keeps going back and forth and going at each other and blaming. We need to get out of that cycle and start to look at how we can work for the people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then kind of wrapping up, kind of final question, going back to the beginning a little bit. You had some, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have some experience in Australia with working there. How do you feel like that benefits you if you were to be elected? And does that help you differentiate yourself from your opponents?
I think it's going to help me immensely, because sometimes when you're in a situation, you can't see what's wrong with it. You're living it day to day. You feel like it should be the same old. Change for a lot of people is difficult. But me looking as an outsider in, and then coming in, and then living it, I believe I can be able to see, okay, this is how it is, and this is actually a good thing, but this aspect needs to be addressed, okay? So that's where, a lot of people here are scared of healthcare being mandated by the government, but I come from a place where, Australians are one of the happiest people there are. And I believe a major factor that contributes to that is the fact that healthcare is available, accessible, and nobody has, and the more people get to see a doctor, the healthier and more beneficial they are long-term. It's not tied to their job. And unfortunately, there's a huge fear factor, which has been fed by a lot of media, and the use of terms such as leftist scares people, or maybe people have a lot of skepticism even when it comes to governmental rule. A lot of people do not trust the government. When I was canvassing, 3 out of 4 people did not even trust the government. So I think that ties in with the whole healthcare. If it became governmental controlled, people wouldn't trust it. I'm wondering whether that's the issue, or whether it's the fact that people want to be able to afford a higher quality healthcare. If that's the case, then they have that right to pick that, but let the other people at least have access.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Samar, do you have any other questions, or are you?
Well, actually, I had just one other question that just popped up in my mind. In Australia, the Green Party often is very successful, or it's not really just a two-party system, well, kind of, but the Green Party has a place, at least then.
Yes.
Why do you think that there's a large difference, do you think, in America compared to Australia with this whole party system?
I believe the Green Party would have thrived. I believe it seemed like it was going to be a threat. And that's where election reform comes in. When it comes to canvassing for us, it's much more difficult. We have to go out, get more signatures. And then when we try to get on the ballot, our petitions are always objected to. And I went through that myself. And then, the voter rolls and the whole state board of election process it's a long drawn out process. And these are areas where it becomes more difficult to have a proper thriving democracy. And I believe it's more beneficial for the corporations to have this two-party system in order to maintain a level of control. And so there's a lot of money being funneled and channeled behind certain parties. And that access is what the Green Party doesn't have here. We're more grassroots oriented. And I do see the Green Party as being the future of America. I feel within a period of time, it will be something that will become to the forefront. I'm seeing a trend globally of the Green Party creeping towards the front. In France, in Canada, in the UK, in Australia. This is the only area where the Green Party hasn't come or dominated in any way. But you know what? This election may be determinative of a lot of things. I do believe after the presidential debate, the Green Party website did crash. And it was because there was a lot of incoming traffic. And people are frustrated. They didn't enjoy the debate at all. There was nothing beneficial that came out of it. There should have been 4 parties at that debate. And I do believe that that would have been more civil and more around issues than pitting and apportioning blame and not coming up with constructive solutions.
Thank you so much. Daniel, you have any other questions?
No, I think if that's all, unless, do you have anything else you want to add for our listeners, or anything you want to say?
I'm not sure what your voter base is, or whether you do have many people that are out there canvassing, getting the youth on board, but I do believe that it's time for the youth to take charge and become a significant number of people that are able to control the way we navigate the political way in America and shape the front. Okay. And for that reason, I have to really be excited about working with VoterBuddies tonight, and for you all taking interest in my platform and the Green Party. That's heartwarming. It's exciting to know how well informed you all are about the situation in America and how much you also are willing to engage and excite your base.
Thank you so much. We'd like to thank you so much for your patience answering all the questions. We're really, really grateful. And I think that's all.
Yeah, we wish you the best of luck in your election, and we hope to see you win and see you.
Oh, thank you. It's so heartwarming, all of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We're coming to an end. Thank you so much to Ms. Sarfraz. That was great. She really shared her experience and answered all our questions, which we're really appreciative about. If there's anybody you want us to interview, just send us a message and we'll try and get them on. We're hoping to do a lot more of these, and we're grateful that you guys are tuning in. And we just want to remind you guys that how important it is to vote, and that we do have 4 parties, and it's really important to see all your options. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this, to show you guys all the options that you guys have for voting. So we hope that you guys educate yourselves and go out and vote.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your support. It's really, really great. I don't know what else to say. So until next time, signing off. Goodbye.
Thank you.